Waves just released a new plugin, and in my opinion, this one is way overdue. This is a new limiter plugin. It's called L4, and it's the 4th generation of their L series limiters. How does it sound? How is it different? Should you buy this plugin? We're going to get into all that here in a second. And since we're talking about compression and limiting, there's a bunch of different settings that you need to understand, and you also need to know how to hear the compression. And if you need a little bit extra help with that, you can go and grab my free Compression 101 ebook. I have a link to download that guide in the description. All right, here's L4. Let's quickly run through the different features. So we have your threshold slider. This is just going to set a point at which you're going to start doing the limiting. Ceiling is going to be the output level. If you want to move these two together so that you're not just like making it super loud, right? Because sliding the threshold down is going to add roughly 12 dB of gain on your output. You can just click this guy and then drag them both down together. So this is just basically a link button. Attenuation on how much gain reduction you're doing is here. And they also have this cool little upward compression feature. Upward compression has a different sound than downward compression, which is what we normally think of in terms of limiting. So instead of just taking the peaks and smashing them down to reduce your dynamic range, upward compression turns up the volume of everything that is quieter than your threshold setting. So it's taking the noise and all the ambience and the smallest signals and bringing them louder, whereas traditional limiting takes the loudest peaks and makes them quieter. It's a subtle difference, but the sound is very different, and we'll get into that in a second. And one other thing I want to mention very quickly. In the manual, they say this thing right here under the upward compression. They say on modern streaming platforms, loudness is measured by loudness section, LUFS short term. This means that increasing the volume of quieter sections gives more perceived loudness without penalty. I don't necessarily agree with that. All the research I've done tells me that it's LUFS integrated. It's not LUFS short term, meaning that if you raise the level of the quieter stuff, overall in your mix, the integrated, meaning the entire average of the entire song, is going to be louder. Now, there are some cases where some of these streaming platform algorithms will do things where they implement gating so that they ignore the quietest parts of the song, but that's usually like around 10 dB quieter than the average integrated LUFS. But I can promise you that if you're using something like upward compression, it's going to be actively raising the level of stuff that's going to be counted towards your loudness target. It's a little misleading, in my opinion, to say this, because I don't think it's really going to let you hack the loudness of your song when it goes on a streaming platform. So it does give you more perceived loudness. That's true. They're saying without penalty. I disagree. So don't feel like you're missing out on something because you don't have an upward compressor on your limiter. You have a gain match option here. So when you're adjusting your threshold, it in theory will adjust the gain so that you can hear the nuanced differences of setting your threshold so that you're not getting tricked by loudness differences when you're moving this threshold slider around. Delta allows you to hear what's happening in terms of compression artifacts. So that's nice if you're trying to figure out how to minimize certain types of distortion. So they also have this button here. This changes to the time domain and basically turns this into a rip-off FabFilter Pro L2 limiter. So if we look at it, right, this looks probably very familiar. Even the colors are the same as FabFilter Pro L2. So I actually like using it in this mode because it's easier to see. Here's how you adjust the threshold, and then your upward compression can be controlled here. Any of the yellow coloration on this spectrogram is going to be the gain applied for upward compression. Any of the red you see at the top is the gain reduction. And then the light blue that we're seeing here is going to be, I guess, the output signal. You have a bunch of different modes this time. So we have modern, smooth, aggressive, safe, and L2. So this is, again, I think the exact same words that are on FabFilter Pro L2, which is a little bit annoying that Waves didn't just come up with their own terminology for their own types of compression, but whatever. L2 is literally the L2 model of this plugin, so you can hear what it used to sound like and the differences that all the new styles have. We have a meter here, which is very useful if you're trying to aim for a target. You have LUFS short, long. You can click to change between them. You have your true peak metering, your range. You can also change this into a true peak meter by clicking this true peak button up top here. I think all this really does is put this plugin into 8x oversampling based on the criteria that's required to make this a true peak limiter. You have some dither options, so you can just click through those. Type 1 is what I typically use. Type 2 will add some auto blanking, and it basically also adds some hiss the entire time. I don't like the sound of that, but in some cases, depending on the style of music, it might be a better option. And then noise shaping changes basically the profile of the noise that's added to perform the dither. All you really need to know is that Ultra is going to add a lot of high frequency content above like 15 kilohertz. So be careful if your music already has a lot of that content in there, because it might drive into some sort of aliasing that can be annoying. I tend to just use the normal shaping. Down here is the interesting part of this plugin. This is actually where I think Waves is innovating a lot of stuff in addition to their different modes here. The release and the clipping basically tells you what's going on under the plugin. So the release parameter is going to be a multiplier of the different release values that they hard programmed under the hood of this plugin. So the higher the number here, the longer the release is going to be applied internally to all the different bands that they're monitoring under the hood that we don't know about. If you go shorter, you're going to make the release snappier. It's going to feel punchier and less pumpy. Longer release settings here is going to be more pumpy, but more controlled and a little bit cleaner. So less distortion artifacts. Clip, the shorter you have here, the cleaner it's going to be, the less distortion. It's going to sound a little bit softer. The longer the clipping envelope is, the more aggression you're going to get out of it. You're going to get a lot of high-end texture coming out. That's going to be in the form of harmonic saturation and some aliasing, so be careful there. I find that if you have bass-heavy music, it can kind of sound gross if you go to 10x. So I tend to keep the clipping shorter. It's cleaner, but it adds a little bit of aggression and snap to it. Stereo link is just going to determine when your level exceeds your threshold. Does the gain reduction apply to both left and right channels at the same amount, or is it going to focus on one side over the other more so? So what I find is that if you're going for maximum stereo width, if you unlink the stereo link by putting that to 0, it's going to feel a little bit wider and bigger. However, theoretically, it could pull the sonic image to the left or the right. I have never really noticed that, so I tend to leave my limiters unlinked because it helps to add a little bit more volume and give it a little bit bigger sense of space and excitement. Something to note here is that this is not unlinking the clipping algorithm. Clipping occurs always per channel, so it means that it's always going to be unlinked. So let's try this out on a number of sources. I'm finding that this plugin sounds really good on buses and also on the master. So let me just throw it on drums, because that's usually the easiest way to hear a limiter work, is that it destroys your drum transients. All right, so let me just play what the drums sound like. And I'm going to be aggressive with these settings so you can really hear what the sound is of these different modes. So lots of useful options in my opinion. What I'm finding is that if I put this on a drum bus, what actually sounds really awesome is this upward compression knob, just a little bit. It helps to bring out and accent the room a little bit in a very pleasing way and gives it a bigger sense of space. So let's hear it without adding any limiting. I really like how it makes everything sound bigger. It's really bringing out the reverb details there, but it's not really killing the peaks, right? Because the mode of operation is not to smash down the transients, it's to raise up the sound of everything else. I will say we are starting to lose a little bit of the definition of the kick drum, but I think that's because it's bringing up the low frequency ringing that's occurring in the drum tracks. So you just got to be careful with this to make sure you're still keeping a nice punchy drum, but it does some cool stuff to it to really make it sound larger than life. Let's listen to it on bass. Wow, that's adding like a distortion to it. So let's just play around with this a little bit so you can get a sense for how you would use this plugin and see if we can come with any cool sounds. It almost sounds like in the aggressive mode that it's adding a little bit of like a transient enhancer in the beginning, right? I'm getting like a lot more aggression on the pick attack when it's in this mode, which for this genre is cool. Safe is safe and boring. It sounds very clean to me. So if you're got a lot of low energy in your bass, probably a good mode to use. It's going to keep it from distorting, so you're going to get it, really punching hard in a speaker. I would use something like this if I had a sub bass. So let's go back to the aggressive because that sounded kind of cool for this. Bringing out a little bit more of that grit. And just heads up, I have this set to 4x oversampling because you get a lot of aliasing with clipping, especially without any oversampling. So I tend to always run limiters at least 2x. You're going to get the best bang for your buck there. 4x to me sounds like a good balance between CPU processing and then quality. And also because we're on a bus, we're not going to need the dither on at all. So you can really hear the clipping distortion when I have this set to 10x. That's just making the length of the clipping a little bit longer. I'm kind of liking this. That's much better. I like that. It gives it a little bit more of a scoop sound. Bass is very controlled, not too aggressive. And if we want to, bring out some more of that really subby bass, we could do something even more safe. All right, let's make the drums sound cool, shall we? It's amazing how aggressive the aggressive limiter is. I mean, that's a good name for it. But that would sound really cool on like a drum room bus. I would really like how that sounds. Let's experiment with this a little bit. Even more aggressive like this. A little bit smoother. So you can really hear what's happening in that kick drum when you have the clip set to 10x. Again, that just means that the clipping is going to be more prevalent. Let's get rid of the stereo link. It just feels more open to me every time. Trying really hard to bring back a little bit of that low energy back from the kick drum, and maybe we just have to do more clipping. That might be the only way to do it. And less limiting, actually, is the real answer. Let's do some upward compression. A little bit here goes a very long way. I would probably keep it under 1.5, but I do like what it's doing, and it's bringing out some of these like mid-rangey frequencies that I think will help the drums translate on smaller speakers. Yeah, I'm kind of digging that. It's a huge improvement to any of Waves' like previous limiters by far, hands down. And I would go as far as to say it's competitive with FabFilter Pro L2. And knowing Waves, they always price really aggressively, so you probably get this for like 30 or 40 bucks. So if you can't afford the FabFilter Pro L2, maybe this is a good alternative. Let's hear it on some guitars. Wow, you can hear it really gets gritty with the aggressive mode. Some people are going to love that sound. I don't know if that's for me. Yeah, that's just the sound of clipping distortion. Yeah. It adds that like fuzzy blanket of like digital noise on top. It can make a sound feel really wide, but at the same time, it can kind of cloud up a mix. So just be aware of what that does. Safe is cool, it's very clean, but I'm missing the pick attack. This is a little better. Smooth is a great choice if you're going for something that sounds more like an actual amp. To me, if you're running amp sims, you want that really modern rock metal sound that's just very hissy sounding. Try something like modern or aggressive. Cool. I'm trying to make the pick attack feel as powerful as possible, so it really feels like the guitar player is driving into the strings, and that's just the sound of this genre. So I'm experimenting with the release parameters here to try to minimize just from it sounding like consistent the entire time. I want a little bit of rush of energy in the beginning of those downstrokes. And then also what we can experiment with is this upward compression. That might be the ticket to giving it a little bit of a lunging kind of sound. Let's just back it off. I'm being really aggressive on this limiter. Let's try the modern setting. A little bit of that upward compression really makes the guitars feel more alive. I think this is the sweet spot, is a little bit of this, little bit of limiting. Write these settings down because this is pretty cool. All right, let's try some vocals.
Myself, wanna kill you to say what you want from me.
Wow, that's nice. That's 9 dB of gain, and I don't hear a lot of really gritty texture from the compression. very clean.
I see it.
It's there, but it's not
You're headed for
what I would expect that much.
A flood ahead. A meaningful disaster. Wanna kill you to say.
Aggressive is pretty over the top for vocals, I think. Unless you're going for like a screaming vocal, it might be a cool mode.
What you want from me. I see it.
Safe sounds excellent for this. I would use that if I had a very delicate vocal or if it's vocal forward, where you want to keep a little bit of the natural tone there. It has more dynamics to my ear, at least the micro dynamics, than any of these other modes. So I say for this type of music, we're going to go with modern.
Wanna kill you to say what you
Actually,
want
no.
from me.
We'll stick with smooth for the clean vocal.
Yourself. Wanna kill you to say what you want from me. I see it.
We get a little bit more control when the release is higher here. It's a little cleaner.
For disaster. A flood ahead.
You're getting distortion and some high-end lift, but I don't like that for a clean vocal, so let's back it off.
A meaningful disaster. Say what you want from me.
Awesome. That's a really good sound. Let's play with the upward compression. So let's back off this threshold a little bit, make it more reasonable.
Flood ahead. A meaningful disaster.
And let's play with the upward compression.
Kill you to say what you want from me. I see it. You're headed for disaster. A flood ahead. A meaningful disaster. Wanna kill you to say what you want from me.
I don't love what this is doing. It's kind of bringing out a lot of the breaths and like things that we don't really want to hear in the mix. And it also makes the parts where there's actual vocal sound a lot flatter to me. So let's just leave it without any upward compression.
Wanna kill you to say what you want from me. I see it. You're headed for disaster. A flood ahead.
Yeah, that's a really nice setting. Super clean, very controlled. All right, finally, let's try it on the mix bus, see what we can do in terms of level.
You've shown up, a soulless great and hopeless. Awakened eyes, never wanted to stay. We are awakened now.
Wow, the upward compression on the master bus sounds wild. It's really, really aggressive. Be careful when you're using this because I think people will easily get carried away without realizing that it makes their music sound really pumpy and kind of weird. Let's put the gain match on because it's just too hard to know if it's sounding good or if it's just sounding louder.
Awakened eyes, never wanted to stay. We are awakened now. We are awakened.
Okay, I'm liking that. It just needs a little bit.
I see it. You're headed for disaster. A flood ahead. A meaningful disaster.
I do wish there was a way to adjust the scale. Maybe is there a way? I don't think there is. It'd be nicer to see the very fine details for mastering. You can kind of, get a visual feedback on the shape of the release tails, but we can't really see what's going on with this scale being zoomed all the way up to -30. And I get it. That probably makes sense for a bus or something, but for mastering, it just makes it a little bit annoying.
They've crumbled under pressure. The empty rooms are mine. They're burning over pressure. Awakened eyes. Are they ready for this? I was somebody, can't you see?
For me, this is probably where it feels the cleanest, but we're losing some of the kick drum impact. So let's and I can feel like I'm getting some of it back as the clipping comes up, but then we're introducing this like flubby distortion.
Never wanted to say we are awakened.
Let's try the aggressive one.
Ready for this? I was somebody, can't you say? Awaken eyes. Can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream.
I mean, that's pretty impressive to me.
Flashing signs, the calming days. Forced to brave the flesh and haze. Slashing through these weakened lines. Searching for more.
So that sounds super clean to me when it's gain matched. This is what it can add to the music if you didn't have this limiter. So let me do a little before and after.
Awaken eyes. Are they ready for this? I was somebody, can't you say? Awaken eyes. Can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream. It's all in vain.
This is a pretty impressive offering from Waves. It's something that I'm going to be putting on a lot of the music that I'm mixing to try to see if it outcompetes what I've been traditionally using. And based on this little test that we've done right here today, I have a feeling it's probably going to end up on my mixes. I really do like the upward compression component of this plugin. It adds a nice movement if it's used subtly, but just be careful using that because it does feel like it takes the punch away from the track if it's overused. So let me know what you thought. How did L4 sound? Is this something you think is a game changer? Or is this just the same thing regurgitated over and over to kind of squeeze out another 40 bucks from your pocket? Let me know in the comments below. Also, do not forget that I have a free Compression 101 ebook in the description that you can download right now. That's going to really help you learn how to dial in and hear the sound of compression so you can make these settings perfect for your song. I'm Bobby Bale, the mixing mastering engineer at Raytown Productions. I'll see you in the next video.